Well, thank you, Laura. Thank you for having us. I guess you got a little bit of a surprise when there was a Ms. instead of a Mr. My name is Hugh Goulbourne. I'm here on behalf of a group called the Huddersfield Windrush Advocacy Group. We're a group of volunteers made up of many in the community. I can see some here tonight. Mark Morris, who many of you will know from Unite, Joanne Flowers, I can't see where you are, Joanne, but many of you will know her. Carol Simpson, I can see you somewhere as well, from Jamaica National. And of course, and others, and I shouldn't of course forget Natalie Pinnock as well, who's given us lots and lots of support and has invited us here tonight to speak. And Natalie, can I just say to you and everyone who organises this event every year how well you've done once again. And thank you very much for inviting us to speak, and thank you for everything you do for the community. Now, I'm not going to say very much. Really, I was just here to introduce our group. And I'm going to hand on to Arta and to Phillip to really tell the story about what it is we're trying to do as a group. I think there's nobody in this room probably who isn't aware of some of the things that have been going on, not just this year, but as Phillip will be able to tell you, for very many years, in terms of the way the government has treated people in our community and in other communities that have come over to this country and have been in this country for a long time. But let me hand over to Arta, who is a local lawyer, has worked, I think, in Kirklees for nearly 20 years. He's an immigration specialist and has done some fantastic things for people here locally, like Phillip and others, and hopefully many others going forward, if we can help you or people you know to really combat things that have been happening from the government, then that's what we want to be able to do. So let me hand over to Arta and to Phillip. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for having us here tonight and for listening really to what we have to say. It has been a great evening, and it's great to celebrate the Black History Month, and in a way it's sad for me that I'm talking here today about a scandal in a way that has affected so many people, and it should have probably never happened. I'm Arta Heath. I am a solicitor, and I work for a company called MyUKVisas. I've been an immigration solicitor, as Hugh says, probably for about 20 years, and I've been in Huddersfield and Kirklees for the last 14 years. Now, I have been asked by the Windrush Group to speak here today because of my experience really that I had with the people who have gone through the process, but also people had the problems that the people had well before the scandal was made aware by the news. Now, I'm sure everybody knows that the Windrush Generation were probably the first mass migration into this country. Now, at the time, the majority of the people who came, they were British citizens. This was the part of the countries where there were still Commonwealth countries. A lot of those countries had not obtained their own independence. So people travelled in British passports, considering themselves as British, coming to help the country that was welcoming them to come and help and regenerate the country. And what an amazing contribution they all have done. However, the problem has been is that the people came without documentations. And although for many, many, many years there was no need for people to have any documentations, unfortunately, with a government going through a hostile immigration policy, with a country where we have sort of changed the way how we are welcoming foreigners and people who are coming from other countries, the hostile environment was born. Now, unfortunately, I know that there have been issues with people from well back in 2005. Now, the word hostile environment and hostile policy that the government was running for, it started around 2010. However, people had problems a lot earlier than that. Now, the majority of the people who don't, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows how hostile the environment is in regards to people when they go to get jobs. And, you know, coming to this country now, most of your countries had no visas. You were all, you know, you could come here, you didn't need a visa. That changed. So the whole of the immigration policy of the whole country changed, and the government basically started making things a lot more difficult, increasing the complexity of the cases and increasing the prices. And that was the issue, because people who didn't have documentation, they could get the documentation, but unfortunately the prices and the cost for those documentation and the criteria that was required was so complex and was just so hard for people that people decided that actually it was better not to have any. What we basically, the Windrush scandal, as I said, it came up in the news this year. However, there were loads and loads of people who had problems well before the actual newspapers took on the scandal. Now, people had problems because what has happened in the policies is that a lot of sort of organizations, they now have to look at the documentation differently than they had to look before. So if you have to go to NHS now, you will find that they will ask you for a passport if you're changing your GP, if you're changing your job, if you are going to look for a job with another agency. Just having your sort of national insurance number and your P60 or previous employment record is not sufficient. So a lot of organizations are asking for extra documentation, and that actually led to a lot of people coming to the attention of Home Office and being deported and even sent back home when actually they had a full right to be here. But the only problem was they couldn't prove it, and it would become a country where you had to prove it. You had to show that you had a right to those benefits and access to those rights. So when the government basically was put with the back on the wall and the Windrush scandal happened, where people actually became aware of what the issues were, then the government set up a task force. The task force has made things easier because the best thing that they have decided is that the documentation is now free. What that means is that if you normally from before you had, in order to get a document certifying that you are British, would have cost you probably about £1,000, you now can get that document free. What they've also have done is that they have lowered the standard of proof that you need to do. So what that means is that if somebody has lived in the country, but they don't have documentation because they moved on from place to place, from job to job, they can't remember where they lived, the government will actually consider people's statements. So they will ask the neighbours. So you can ask your neighbours, you can ask your doctor, or you can ask a friend of yours who's been with you and has known you for a long time. Documents that before they did not accept, but they are now accepting. And that is why the government is doing this, because they understand the problem of not having documentation is going to cost people. A lot of the laws that have been changed require the bank, the job, the employers, the NHS, for you to check people's documentation. And unless you have a British passport, unless you have a document that says you are certified as being British, you really need to get advice and to try and see whether to sort it out now, because it's not going to be forever. The government has also opened a compensation scheme. Now that is for people who have truly suffered because of not having this documentation. And Philip here has had one of probably bad situations that he has been going on for many years and has struggled due to lack of documentation. However, the government, at the moment, they are deciding on that compensation, but they have said that they will give compensation to anybody who has actually struggled and who has had to create problems or who has had to deal with loads of issues because of lack of documentation.
There's a lot of red tape around that compensation.
Sorry?
There's a lot of red tape around.
There's a lot of red tape and it hasn't been opened yet. So at the moment it's just a consultation.
I know a lot of people that's tried to access that compensation, and the amount of red tape surrounding it
Well, they haven't, the compensation hasn't been, at the moment, you can just make the claim, and they haven't decided on the figure. So the compensation scheme is actually still on a consultation. And that is why, in a way, okay, sorry, can everybody hear me, yeah? That is why, at the moment, the problem is that the government doesn't really know how many people are affected. And that is why it becomes so important for people to come forward. And that's why they can't deal with the compensation scheme. Because they can't look at a figure when they don't know how many people are entitled to it. They don't know how much to budget for it. So at the moment, they are waiting and seeing how many people are coming forward, what are the problems that people have had, and then they will make the decision on the compensation scheme. But there is a compensation scheme, and people who have truly suffered, because they couldn't get a job, because as a result of losing that job they couldn't get a house and everything else, they will be entitled to a compensation. So, as I said, what should people who have been affected do? I think is absolutely crucial that people come forward. It really is a question of getting advice with, as I said, unless you have a British passport or a certificate proving that you are a British citizen, you will find that actually in years things will get a lot more difficult. So it's very important that you check it now. The independence of the countries have changed the rules, so a lot of people that think that themselves as being British, actually they might not be British. What that means is their children are not British. And you might find that a lot of other people who've lived here for a long, long time are born here because they were born after 1982. You do not become British unless one of your parents is British. And if you don't have British parents, you might be at school here, you've never left the country, but you'll find that you're not British. So it's very important, very, very important that people come forward. As we said, the reason why the Huddersfield Advocacy Group has come together is because we think that people still are not coming forward because they're scared. I come across people who say to me, well, this is what happens if they look at my documentation and they think I'm not entitled to it. Now, the good thing is, people are given a chance through Windrush Advocacy Group, through myself, to have free legal advice. We will be able to look at your documentation and we'll be able to see whether you should go for it or not. If there is a risk, we will tell you there is a risk so you don't do it. But I think the majority of the people, if you've lived in the country, the Windrush scheme actually says if you came to UK before 1988, so anybody who came to UK before 1988, I think is worth looking into what status they might have if they don't have a British passport. So, as I said, it can be done, and we have here Philip, who probably was my first client, which I've known him since 2005, and I've seen him during the years many, many times, and I had to go through the same advice and say, I'm sorry, there is nothing I can do but to go through this process, which will cost you a lot of money. Now, Philip will tell you about his story.
Hello, my name is Philip, and like Arta says, first of all, let me thank her and the organisation for helping me gain my citizenship. I'm in the process of getting the passport in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Thank you very much. Well, I arrived here in England 1967 as a 9-year-old boy on a British Commonwealth passport, which gave me the right, it said, right to work and indefinite stay. Did honour school in here, and on my education, got piles and piles of certificates to say I'm English. Well, I call myself English. But when I got my first job, after 15 years, got me redundant, and after that, it was time and trouble everywhere I went. Have you got a profile identity? Have you got a passport? Have you got your birth certificate? No, I haven't got an English one. I've got a St. Lucian one. That wasn't suffice. So therefore, I couldn't get a job. Went on the dole, sent me on so many training courses. I've got over 35 certificates of different jobs and still couldn't get a job. Now, luckily, I've been able to get a job as a carer, support worker, and it's helping me to get by. It's not the job that I wanted. But like they say, you've got to make do with what you got, not what you want. So I'm saying to you, everybody out there, if you know anybody that's going through what I've gone through or experiencing it, there is help out there. Arta and our organisation, or there's other organisations. Therefore, don't be frightened to come forward. Just go and do it. Like she said, 2 years down the line, when we come out of the EU, we're not going to be British. We're still going to have problems to get what we want, whether it's house, travel. So therefore, just go for it.
Yes, I mean, it is. I have a lot of people who say to me, well, actually, you know, my mum and dad, they never want to travel. They never actually want a passport, or they never need one. And I can understand that people, you know, feel that they don't need to have one. But it's not the issue of passport being as a travel document. The passport is going to be a document that will be used for you to prove your right to be here. And at the moment, you can get a passport for free. It costs, British citizenship costs actually quite a lot of money. So take the offer. If you do know anybody, tell people to come forward, tell people to get advice, because this is the time. It's not going to last forever, and it's really, really important that people do act now. Otherwise, it really will be too late. And the next time, there will not be newspapers crying out saying, these people have got, you know, been ill-treated, because the government says, well, I told you to go and get documentation. If anybody has got any questions for me, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, this is all really we have to say, of course. Well, my phone number, there are leaflets with the Windrush Advocacy Group. I am part, as I said, obviously I'm based in Huddersfield. I've got, the firm is called MyUKVisas. But we also have got the councillors. Amanda Pinnock, you can speak directly to the councillors. They know who I am. You can speak to Hugh, you can speak to people from Unison, a lot of the people who actually you mentioned here. Sorry.
Hiya, it's just a question for anyone. I'm from Leeds. I know there are places in Leeds, but there may be people from other towns and cities here. Is there some sort of collective place where people can look, maybe on the internet, and say, okay, I'm in this town, I'm here, and I can go and get similar advice to what you're giving?
I know that there are Windrush advocacy groups set up like the Huddersfield one in other towns.
Yeah.
I don't know one specific, and I don't know that whether there is actually a website with all Windrush advocacy groups. I mean, obviously, I don't have a problem with people coming from Leeds to see me. There is no issue with that. But I don't know if there is an organised way being done at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions?
I've got one.
Yeah.
You talked about 2005 changes. It was actually in 2000 the asylum and immigration law was amended sneakily, very sneakily, and Theresa May, the so-called Theresa May, who you see with the hot potato called Brexit, right? She's the one that sneakily enforced this, right? So how come she's not facing the rhetoric, the real rhetoric of the people?
Well, yes, it's absolutely right. It's the 1999 Immigration Act where all the changes happened, and yes, Theresa May was actually the Home Secretary that put through those changes. Why she doesn't, I guess it's for the people to say. I mean, I'm not a politician. My job is to say that actually I've lived here 20 years. I've come myself as a migrant, and I've never seen in my time that I've worked here, and I've worked with people from all over the world, I have never seen any more hostile environment and what is happening in every day, in the police stations, in airports, with people being taken and detained for absolutely, very sort of minor things that they shouldn't be. And there is a drive on that, but unfortunately, it is being, fueled by politics and everything else. But I think as long as people know their rights, as long as people are happy that they have the documentation. I think, and we raise the voice as well, and we do raise our voice. We live here, this is our community. So it's important for people to say, you know, I don't want to be treated like this anymore. And I completely agree, it's, you know, there should be a proper answer to this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.